While at her father's funeral, drenched in grief and surrounded by mourners in black, she never imagined the man she called her husband would turn her heartbreak into humiliation. As the last shovel of earth fell on her father's coffin, he threw her luggage onto the wet ground at her father's funeral, declaring she was no longer welcome in their home. But what he did not know was that the very man they were burying had left her something beyond imagination. A $10 billion empire with her name on it. The woman he tossed aside in public shame was now the silent owner of everything he ever envied. But why did her father keep the inheritance a secret from everyone? Why did her husband betray her on the very day she lost everything? And when she finally revealed who truly owned the empire, what exactly did she do that left him speechless? Rain blurred her vision as she stood before the fresh grave, the sky itself mourning with her. Her black dress clung to her skin, the hem soaked in mud. Around her, umbrellas opened like dark flowers, shielding faces that whispered condolences without looking her in the eye. The world she knew, her father's world, had ended. She was his only daughter, the quiet one who stayed out of boardrooms and banquets, who never asked for anything but his time. Now even that was gone. Her husband Daniel stood a few feet away, his tailored coat untouched by the rain. His expression was composed, almost impatient, as though he could not wait for this final ritual to end. He had always been like that, controlled, polished, a man who thrived in rooms of power and reputation. Once she thought that control made her feel safe. Now it chilled her. When the pastor closed his Bible and the crowd began to disperse, she turned toward Daniel, expecting him to reach for her hand. Instead, she saw him gesture sharply to the driver. The car trunk popped open. Her luggage, 3 neatly packed bags she had brought for the funeral, landed on the wet gravel with dull thuds. The murmurs around them froze. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice cracking. He did not even look ashamed. "You will not be coming home with me," he said flatly. "It is over. I am done pretending." Pretending? Her lips trembled. "Daniel, my father just died," he finished coldly, "and I am tired of living in his shadow. I need a woman who is not drowning in sentiment or weakness." The words sliced through her. Gasps rippled through the guests. Somewhere someone whispered her name in disbelief. She wanted to speak, to scream, to demand an explanation, but he was already walking toward the car, his arm slipping easily around another woman's waist. The woman's black veil fluttered, revealing familiar crimson lips. Claire, her father's executive assistant. The betrayal struck like lightning, swift, merciless, searing through her bones. She stood frozen as the car drove away, tires splashing through the puddles beside her luggage. Her mother's old pearls, her last inheritance before this, broke loose from her trembling hand, scattering like tears on the ground. Later that night, she found herself back at the small cafe she used to visit after long days at her father's estate. The cafe smelled of vanilla and roasted beans, a comforting scent from a world that now felt unreachable. Her childhood friend, Maya, the cafe's owner, set a cup before her. "I saw it on social media," Maya said softly. "He really did that at the funeral." She nodded, eyes hollow. He did not even wait until the coffin was lowered. Maya's face darkened. "That man was always chasing power. Maybe your father saw through him. Maybe that is why." She stopped, realizing her friend's voice had turned cautious, almost fearful. "Why? What?" "Nothing," Maya said, shaking her head. "Forget I said anything." But she could not forget. That night she sat in her small apartment above the cafe, the sound of rain steady against the window. She looked at her father's old watch ticking on the table. The only thing she had left from him. Daniel's words echoed. "I am tired of living in his shadow." His shadow. Her father's company, Dominion Holdings, cast a long one, spanning continents, industries, billions, and assets. But she was never part of it. Her father had always told her to focus on her own path, to stay away from corporate fire. She thought it was protection. Now she wondered if it was something else. A memory flickered, her father's frail voice in the hospital bed gripping her hand. "When the time comes, you will understand why I kept you away." At the time, she had thought he meant grief. But as she stared at her packed bags, thrown into the rain by the man she once trusted most, she began to suspect there was more. She wiped her tears, stood, and looked at her reflection in the dark window. The woman staring back at her no longer looked fragile. She looked like someone standing at the edge of revelation. In the reflection, she whispered to herself, "If he wanted a woman with power, let us see how he handles the one who truly has it." The days after the funeral blurred into a strange quiet. The world outside went on as usual. Traffic hummed, emails flooded in, deadlines passed, but inside their home, silence ruled. She returned to the penthouse Daniel once proudly called the house love built, only to find its warmth gone. He was there physically, yet his presence had turned ghost-like. Every evening, she cooked dinner the way she always had, his favorite herb roasted chicken, his preferred Cabernet breathing on the counter, soft jazz humming through the speakers. It had been her ritual of love, her way of keeping them anchored when work pulled him away. But lately, he came home late, ate little, and spoke even less. At first, she thought it was grief. Her father's death had unsettled everyone, especially Daniel, who had admired his empire, even as he envied it. But the way he avoided her eyes, the clipped tone, the sudden distance, it all whispered something darker. One night, as she stirred the pot on the stove, she heard the door open. She glanced at the clock. 10:47 p.m. Long day, she asked, trying to sound casual. He loosened his tie, sighing. Work does not stop just because life does. The word stung, but she smiled faintly. Dinner is ready. He sat, scrolled through his phone, and poked absently at his food. She watched him, her heart sinking with every second of silence. I was thinking, she began softly. Maybe we should take a break. Go somewhere quiet. My father wanted us to. He cut her off. Not now. I have too much going on. Too much going on, she swallowed. Daniel, it has been weeks. You barely talk to me. You come home late. He dropped his fork, irritation flashing across his face. Are you keeping tabs on me now? She froze. The man she loved, the one who once kissed her hand at every dinner, now glared at her like she was an inconvenience. I am just worried, she whispered. Then stop. Worrying does not change anything. He rose abruptly and left the table. Moments later, she heard the shower running, then silence again. She sat alone at the table, the candle flickering between untouched plates, the air heavy with unsaid words. The next few nights were worse. His late arrivals turned into entire absences. Excuses multiplied. Meetings, deadlines, a team dinner. His cologne lingered faintly when he passed her, but another scent began to follow him, something floral and unfamiliar. Still, she clung to hope. Maybe grief made him this way. Maybe it was just stress. Maybe love could fix it. So she kept cooking, kept waiting, kept pretending. But one night, hope finally broke. It was a Thursday. She had made stew the way he liked. Slow cooked, rich with spices. The clock hit midnight. She called. No answer. Again, no answer. Then around 12:30, headlights washed over the window. She rushed to the door, relief flooding her chest until she saw him step out of the car. He was not alone. Claire leaned across the passenger seat, smiling, lipstick smudged like a mark of possession. Her stomach twisted. The door slipped from her grasp, creaking open as Daniel looked up, eyes wide, not with guilt but annoyance. What are you doing up? He snapped. Her voice trembled. You were with her. Claire emerged from the car unbothered, fixing her hair. It is not what it looks like, she said with a smirk that said otherwise. Her heart pounded. Daniel, tell me it is not true. He exhaled sharply, frustration spilling over. Fine, you want honesty. Yes, I am seeing her. The world tilted. Claire's heels clicked against the driveway as she stepped closer, voice dripping with venom. Do not look so shocked. You were never really his type. He needed someone who could keep up. The words tore something inside her that she could not name. Daniel's face was hard, detached. It is better this way. You deserve someone. Simpler. Simpler. The word echoed like a curse. He brushed past her, entering the house. She did not follow. She stood in the cold night, watching him disappear into the place they once called home. By morning, he was gone along with his suits, his laptop, even the framed wedding photo on the mantel. All that remained was the silence and a faint trace of his cologne on the pillow beside her. She grieved quietly. No tears this time, just an ache that hollowed her out from the inside. Days turned into weeks. She stopped answering calls. The cafe downstairs became her refuge. Maya watched her closely, concern deepening each day. You cannot keep pretending you are okay, she said one evening, handing her a cup of tea. I am not pretending, she replied softly. I am surviving. Then one morning, survival turned into reckoning. As she walked to the cafe, she froze at the corner. There they were, Daniel and Claire, seated at the outdoor cafe across the street, laughing, their hands intertwined. The same cafe where she and Daniel had shared breakfast every Sunday. Maya followed her gaze, her lips tightening. They are not even trying to hide it. Her throat burned, humiliation flooding her chest. People watched, whispered, judged. She forced herself to keep walking, head high, pretending she did not see. But inside, something cracked. Something that would never mend the same way again. By the time she reached the counter, her hands were trembling. Maya touched her arm gently. He is not worth your ruin. She managed a broken smile. No, she said quietly, but he is about to be part of my rise. The cafe had become her sanctuary, a quiet place where the hum of espresso machines drowned out her thoughts. She spent her mornings cleaning tables, arranging pastries, and pretending not to notice when whispers followed her name. The scandal of Daniel leaving her for Claire had spread fast, carried by colleagues, neighbors, and social media gossip. Pity had replaced respect, and the woman once admired as the late chairman's graceful daughter had become a symbol of humiliation. Yet, amid the noise, she found a strange calm and routine until the morning she found the envelope. It arrived in a stack of old documents from her father's estate, sealed with the deep blue wax he always used. Her breath caught as she ran her fingers over his handwriting. For my daughter, to be opened when you are ready to see beyond grief. Her father's voice echoed in her memory the last night before he slipped into unconsciousness. When the time comes, do not be afraid to step into what was always yours. Inside the envelope was a letter and a key. She sat in the cafe's back room, her hands trembling as she read. My dearest, you once asked me why I kept you away from the boardroom, from Dominion Holdings, from the ruthless men who devour gentleness and call it strength. It was not because you were unworthy, but because I wanted you to know compassion before power. Dominion is not just a company. It is our legacy. And when I am gone, it becomes yours. You hold majority ownership through trusts I established long ago, hidden even from those who thought they controlled it. When you find this, go to Martin Reeves. He will explain everything. Your strength will be tested. They will not welcome you. But remember, true leadership begins the moment you stop waiting for permission. Love always, Father. Tears blurred her vision. For so long, she had believed her father never saw her as capable, never trusted her with his empire. Now she realized he trusted her more than anyone. The key led her to the law offices of Martin Reeves, her father's longtime attorney. The building towered over the city, steel, glass, and prestige. She hesitated before entering. Her reflection in the mirror, doors a ghost of who she used to be. Inside the office smelled of leather and paper, the air thick with old money and secrecy. Martin stood when he saw her, his silver hair glinting under the lights. Forgive me, Mrs. Hart, he said gently. I was wondering when you would come. She handed him the letter. He said you would explain everything. He nodded, motioning for her to sit. From a locked cabinet, he pulled out a thick portfolio and laid it before her. Your father was a visionary, but more than that, he was a strategist. He saw through Daniel's ambition years ago. Her heart stilled. He suspected. More than suspected, Martin said. He knew Daniel's marriage to you was driven by access. That is why he concealed your inheritance. Dominion Holdings controlling shares, 51%, are in your name through multiple trusts. As of your father's passing, you are the majority owner. Her breath caught. That cannot be possible. Daniel and Claire. Martin gave a small knowing smile. Work for Dominion. Or rather, they did. Claire is an executive vice president. Daniel manages client relations through one of Dominion's subsidiary firms. I would say your father had an impeccable sense of irony. The room spun. The same man who threw her out, who mocked her weakness, was now unknowingly employed by the woman he had humiliated. Her pulse quickened, anger and disbelief fusing into something she had not felt in weeks. Control. Martin slid a document toward her. You will need to decide how to proceed. I can arrange a meeting with the board. They will challenge your authority. Of course, some will see you as your father's sentimental heir. But if you are prepared, we can begin formal transition. Her fingers brushed the company's seal embossed at the top of the document. Dominion Holdings, her father's empire, now hers. For a long moment, she said nothing. The city stretched beneath the window. Silver towers, endless lights, all part of the world she had been kept from. A world Daniel had chased but never truly owned. She looked up, her voice steady. Arrange the meeting. Martin studied her face, the softness replaced by a quiet, deliberate strength. You sound like him, he murmured. That night, she returned to her apartment and spread the documents across the dining table. Ownership charts, trust papers, signatures, each one a confirmation of who she truly was. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. I will be coming by tomorrow to pick up the rest of my things. Do not make a scene. She stared at the screen, a small, humorless smile forming. Do not make a scene. The irony almost made her laugh. She closed her eyes, her father's words echoing in the silence. True leadership begins the moment you stop waiting for permission. When Daniel walked through that door tomorrow, he would not be facing the woman he left behind at the funeral. He would be facing the heir to a $10 billion empire. And for the first time since her world had fallen apart, she looked forward to morning. The next morning dawned cold and gray, the kind of morning that smelled like endings. She had been up all night, studying the documents Martin gave her, tracing the ink of her father's signature like it was a map back to her strength. By the time Daniel's text came, I am on my way up, she was no longer the woman who cried herself to sleep. She heard his familiar footsteps echo through the hallway, confident, careless. The door opened without a knock. Daniel stepped inside, his expensive cologne preceding him. He looked around, smirking. You have been busy, he said, glancing at the piles of files on the dining table. Trying to look productive. You do not need to impress anyone anymore. She turned slowly, her expression calm. You came for your things. They are in the guest room. He laughed softly. Relax. I am not here to fight. I just came to get my suits, my watch collection, a few. His eyes fell on the Dominion Holdings folder. Interesting. That is my company's logo. What are you doing with that? She let the silence hang before answering, her tone measured. Catching up on family business. Family business. He chuckled. Sweetheart, you have never even stepped into a boardroom. Dominion is not a family project. It is a battlefield. Leave that to people who know what they are doing. Her lips curved almost a smile. Like you. He missed the sharpness in her tone. Exactly. People like me. Claire has been managing some of our new expansions. She is brilliant, by the way. Knows how to take control. You could have learned a thing or two from her. The casual cruelty rolled off his tongue like habit. You have always had potential, he went on. But you were too soft, too sentimental. That is why you could never handle my world. She folded her arms, her gaze steady. You are right, she said quietly. I did not belong in your world because it was too small. He frowned, confused, but she did not elaborate. Take what you came for, she said simply. Then leave. He hesitated as if sensing something had shifted but shrugged it off. Fine, do not wait up for explanations later. When the door closed behind him, the silence that followed was not heavy. It was liberating. That afternoon, she dressed with deliberate precision, a black tailored suit, understated jewelry, and her father's old wristwatch. Each piece felt like armor. Martin's driver waited downstairs to take her to Dominion's headquarters. As the car pulled up to the towering glass building, her pulse quickened. The lobby buzzed with employees, men and women who had known her only as Mr. Harding's quiet daughter. Their eyes widened as she walked past, her steps measured, confident. The boardroom on the top floor gleamed with wealth. Marble table, panoramic skyline view, and at the head of the table, Claire. Claire looked radiant, self-assured, seated where her father once sat. Daniel stood beside her, whispering something that made her smirk. When they saw her, surprise flickered, then amusement. Look who decided to visit, Claire said smoothly. I did not expect to see you here. Did security let you in by mistake? Laughter rippled faintly around the table. She smiled, unshaken. No mistake. I am exactly where I am supposed to be. Daniel folded his arms. This is a board meeting. Only shareholders and executives are allowed. You are neither. She walked forward, setting her leather folder on the table with deliberate calm. Actually, she said, opening it, I am both. A murmur spread through the room as she slid the documents across to the chairman of the board. These are legal confirmations from Reeves and Associates detailing the transfer of controlling shares in Dominion Holdings as stipulated by the late founder's estate. Claire's smile faltered. What are you talking about? The chairman adjusted his glasses, flipping through the pages. His expression hardened. She is right. As of last week's verification, the majority ownership, 51%, is held by her, effective immediately. The silence that followed was electric. Daniel's face drained of color. That is impossible. It is not, she said softly. You see, my father built this company, and he built me to protect it. Claire's voice sharpened. This is absurd. You do not know how to run a company of this scale. You are right, she said. I do not yet. But unlike you, I know what integrity looks like, and I will learn fast. She turned to the board. My father's vision was buried under corruption and ambition. I will not let that continue. Dominion will rise again under leadership that honors his legacy. The chairman nodded slowly. As majority owner, she has full authority to oversee leadership changes effective today. Claire's composure cracked, her voice rising. You cannot do this. Oh, I can, she replied, her tone sharp and quiet. And I just did. Daniel's eyes darted between them, realization dawning. He had betrayed the woman who now controlled everything he had wanted. The empire he had schemed to possess belonged entirely to her. As the meeting adjourned, she gathered her papers and turned to leave. Claire's glare followed her, venomous but powerless. Daniel caught her arm near the door, his voice low. You planned this, did not you? Waiting for the perfect moment to humiliate me. She met his gaze without flinching. No, Daniel, you did that all by yourself. She walked away, heels echoing on the marble floor, leaving him standing in the ruin of his own arrogance. Outside the boardroom, Martin waited with a faint smile. I take it the meeting went as expected. She exhaled slowly, the first real breath of power filling her lungs. Better, she said. It went exactly as my father intended. In the weeks that followed her boardroom reveal, the entire company seemed to tremble under her name. Whispers traveled through every corridor of Dominion Holdings. The founder's daughter was back, and she owned everything. At first, there was skepticism. Executives doubted her capability. Some refused to make eye contact. Others smiled too quickly, trying to guess whether she would become their downfall or their salvation. But she did not rush. She listened. She walked the factory floors, visited departments, sat with interns and janitors, and asked questions no one at the top ever asked. She did not carry herself like an heir. She carried herself like someone rebuilding something sacred. Claire, however, was far from silent. She retained her position as interim CEO only because the transition took time, and she used those days to spread quiet venom. Memos were lost, meetings miscommunicated, and divisions started pulling away under subtle sabotage. Yet through it all, she remained calm. She remembered her father's warning, they will not welcome you. Then one morning, Martin Reeves entered her office with a manila folder. His tone was grave. You should see this. Inside were reports, wire transfers, shell accounts, falsified contracts. All of it pointed to one name, Claire Bennett. Embezzlement, she whispered. Among other things, Martin replied. She has been redirecting client payments through offshore firms. Millions over 3 years. If this goes public, Dominion could collapse. For a long moment, she stared at the papers. Betrayal upon betrayal. First Daniel, then Claire. But now she understood what her father meant when he said compassion before power. She would not let emotion cloud her judgment. Prepare the evidence, she said quietly. We will confront her at the next board meeting. The following week, the conference room was filled to bursting. Tension crackled in the air. Claire sat at the head of a table, confident, rehearsed. Daniel was beside her, noticeably more tired, the spark of arrogance dulled by recent weeks. When she entered, all eyes turned. Claire forced a smile. Ah, the princess returns. To what do we owe this royal visit? She placed the folder on the table. To truth. Truth. Claire's brow arched. Yes, the truth about how Dominion has been bleeding money into your personal accounts. The room went dead silent. Claire laughed, brittle and sharp. You are accusing me of theft. That is absurd. Martin stepped forward, handing out copies of the documented transactions. Gasps followed as pages turned. The chairman's expression darkened. This is undeniable, he said. Miss Bennett, these signatures are yours. Claire's composure crumbled. This is a setup. You think you can destroy me just because you inherited your father's fortune. She met her eyes evenly. No, Claire. I am saving the company you tried to destroy. The board members began to speak in hushed tones, some in outrage, others in relief. Effective immediately, the chairman declared, Claire Bennett is removed from her position, pending full investigation. Claire's face turned pale. She turned toward Daniel as if for support, but he looked away. The silence between them said everything. Security entered quietly. Claire's voice rose in a shrill cry, echoing down the hallway as she was escorted out. You will regret this. You are not built for power. You will end up just like him, buried by it. The doors closed behind her. When the noise faded, Daniel approached her hesitantly. His voice was soft now, uncertain. You did it. You really did it. She turned slowly. No, Daniel. I undid what you helped her build. He swallowed hard. Claire lied to me. I thought she cared. I thought. You thought wrong. Her tone was calm, but final. You did not love me, Daniel. You loved what I represented. When that vanished, so did you. Now that I have rebuilt it, you think you can just come back. He stepped closer, eyes pleading. I made mistakes. I see that now. I lost everything. My job, my home, my reputation. But maybe we could start again. You still mean something to me. For a moment, she simply looked at him. This was the man who had thrown her bags into the rain. The man who laughed with another woman while she mourned her father. And now, stripped of power, he stood before her like a shadow of his former self. I do not hate you, she said softly. I just do not need you anymore. He flinched, the words cutting deeper than anger ever could. Without another word, he left. That night, she stood in her father's old office, the one she had avoided until now. His chair faced the city skyline, the lights of Dominion Tower reflecting off the glass. She sat down slowly, running her hand over the polished wood. On the desk was a small box she had not noticed before. Inside was another note in his handwriting. If you are reading this, you found your place. Power will tempt you to harden. Do not. Lead with what the world underestimated. Your heart. She smiled faintly, tears glimmering in her eyes. Over the following months, she led Dominion through chaos, restructuring departments, holding open forums, rebuilding morale. Her transparency drew back clients who had nearly left. Employees began to respect her, not because of her last name, but because of her fairness. And though challenges remained, something within her had changed forever. She was not her father's sheltered daughter anymore. She was not Daniel's wife or Claire's rival or the woman humiliated at a funeral. She was the leader of a $10 billion empire. Calm, deliberate, unshakable. Each night before leaving the office, she lit the small candle she kept by the window and whispered her father's words to herself. True leadership begins the moment you stop waiting for permission. And in that soft glow reflected against the skyline of the city her family built, she finally understood her journey had never been about revenge. It had always been about becoming. 6 months later, autumn arrived in the city. The same season, she had lost her father and unknowingly her old self. But this time, the air did not sting. It felt calm, familiar, whole. She stood at the edge of Dominion Tower's rooftop garden, a space her father had loved, but which had long been neglected. Now it was full of life again. Green vines climbed trellises, sunlight glinted off the glass, and the faint hum of the city below whispered a melody of progress. Beside her was Martin Reeves, her father's old confidant and now her most trusted advisor. You have rebuilt what everyone thought was broken, he said, watching her quietly. Dominion stronger than it has been in years. You have done him proud. She smiled faintly. It is strange. I thought inheriting $10 billion would change me, but it was not the money that mattered. It was the why. Martin nodded. Your father always believed legacy was not about wealth. It was about continuity of purpose. Her gaze drifted toward the skyline. The sun dipped low, bathing the glass towers in molten gold. For the first time in a long time, she felt at peace. Not the temporary calm of revenge satisfied, but the enduring serenity of purpose fulfilled. Then came the soft chime of her phone. A message. She almost ignored it until she saw the name. Daniel. It was short. I am sorry. I have left the city. I hope you find happiness, even if it is not with me. She read it once, then once more, then quietly deleted it. No anger, no tears, just closure. Below, cars moved like veins of light. Somewhere in that glow, her past had dissolved. The betrayal, the humiliation, the rain-soaked night when her husband threw her out after her father's funeral. All of it now existed only as proof of how far she had come. She turned to Martin. "I have been thinking," she said, "about creating a foundation, something in my father's name to support young entrepreneurs, especially those dismissed or overlooked." Martin's face softened. That is exactly what he would have wanted. She smiled. "No, it is what we needed when no one believed in us." They walked back toward the elevator, the wind tugging gently at her coat. Just before stepping inside, she glanced back at the garden one last time. In the reflection of the glass door, she saw herself. Not the broken woman who had once begged to be loved, but the woman her father had always seen. Calm, radiant, formidable. A new chapter had begun. Weeks later, news outlets buzzed again, not with scandal, this time but admiration. The Dominion Renewal Initiative launched across the country, empowering small businesses and providing scholarships to women in leadership. Headlines called her the heir who rebuilt her father's empire in her own life. But she did not chase the attention. She spent most of her days mentoring, listening, guiding. She visited rural schools, sat with young dreamers, and told them stories, not about wealth, but about resilience. Sometimes at night, she would sit on her balcony, sipping tea, looking up at the same stars her father once pointed to when he said, "The higher you rise, the smaller the noise below becomes." And now it was true. The noise was gone. Only clarity remained. As the city lights flickered below, she whispered softly to the wind, "Thank you, Father, for teaching me that even when they throw you out at your lowest, destiny will always open a higher door." And somewhere beyond the skyline, as if answering her, a soft breeze stirred, warm, steady and sure, carrying forward the legacy of both the man who built an empire and the woman who learned to own it.